All right, we are live. Hi. Okay.
Oh,
So Gigi's never done a hangout before, and the last time I did one, things were mad different. So pardon us as let me go ahead and generate this YouTube URL, hopefully, and put it here for people to see. Let's see.
do you have this thread, Akilah, that I have?
Yes.
I'm not super familiar with Google Plus, so I think I put a note and I said, yes, Akilah is posting the link. And I see all our lovely faces. I see Neff, I see Kim and Chatel. But I don't know how to share the invite I got, like the link with them.
Okay, so let's see. Let me see if I can
Okay.
solve that. I'm looking at the broadcast settings. Other audio and video from my broadcast? No. New guests are muted when they join. Let's say yes for starters. Okay. Um, so we are live, which is awesome, and I'm just trying to see the views. It's not giving me a. Let me try pasting this link in the thing and seeing what comes up. And I can definitely see the thread. So there should be something that's showing up that's saying this event is happening now, join Hangout for anyone who's at the actual Google Hangout invite page.
Mhm.
So let me go to edit event and see if it'll let me add here to advanced, show more options. No. All right. So let's see. Well, I don't see where to do that. I'm not even seeing a space for it, but as I said, we are recording.
Yes, we are.
Yes. So we will have to just send the link out to everybody as soon as it's done. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of see if I can keep an eye on the Q&A or on the questions or comments to see if we can interact that way.
Okay.
All right. Let me click on join hangout here and see what happens.
Okay.
One last effort.
Yeah, I see the link at the top on my PC, so I'm gonna see if I can send that on my phone.
Okay.
Let's try. That'll be the one thing, and then we can dive in because I know.
Okay. Yeah, the time and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. So I'm gonna put a note here.
technology, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's supposed to be so advanced and smart, but I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's all good. We are going to get to the good stuff in just a
We're
second.
recording. We're live now, but it doesn't seem as if you all can see us. And what I'll do is let me see us. Let us know. What I'll do is when the actual video shows up on my YouTube channel, I'll just, even though it's live now and everybody can see us, we'll make
Mhm.
the video itself a little less painful because we'll cut out all of this
We
figuring
can
out.
edit, right? Exactly. All of us, us figuring it out.
Yeah.
It's a really long link. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm actually going to try it again too. Won't even let me copy. There we go. Copy. Go back here. And let me look back at what everybody's saying here. Hmm.
Okay. All right.
Okay, good. I see that you put it there. And hopefully it should show up at the bottom if they come in.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that helped at all.
Yeah, because I can see it. I can see where you posted that. And I'm trying to see who is about to respond here. This thing is interesting. Like it's showing different people's faces at different times as if they're. Hmm.
All right, let's just go.
Yep.
All right.
So, thank you guys for being here. Even though it's a little bit after the fact, we were not able to figure out how to do the live broadcast component, but you get to watch and enjoy. And I'm just excited because I've read Gigi's book, The Beautiful Disruption, twice now. and and the second time, as with any good body of work, any good piece of art, you get something different. You know, it's like you're having the experience in a way for the first time, but it's a little bit familiar, but you get a, you know, just like new spaces kind of depending on where you are at that time. And I was able to have that, you know, that experience. So I appreciate you. First of all, thank you for risking expression. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm.
I think the same thing. I really didn't know what to expect from the story perspective of your book. I knew that the message would be powerful. I knew what you were about. But when I got, like, when it just started off, the story, I was like, I'm assuming this is her, but is it her? Or is it about a girl? And I was like, wow, like, you just really never know someone's story, what they've come from, where they've been. And I was just, like, in awe, like, and I don't know if everybody's read your book, and I don't want to give out spoilers.
Well, I'm going to spoil in some sections, let me tell you right now, for yours, because I'm going to be totally selfish and just talk about the parts that I really enjoyed. And I even want to read some parts because it's important. You know, it's really important to share. It's narrative is such a powerful tool for healing. That it's more so even than when you watch a movie. You know, there's something about the written word, and there's something about a woman's narrative that I think just kind of goes in and speaks to the core of a person like nothing else can. So I'm definitely, like, spoiler alert right now, because I'm totally going to say.
Right, we kind of have to really get into the discussion.
Yeah.
Of the invitation.
Yeah. So, so I'd love to start if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. So I want to start off actually by reading what came to me as I read it this second time. I wrote down what came up, and just to kind of give you an idea of the spaces that it put me in and why I think it's an important book for women and men to read, you know, from a space of understanding and healing. So I put a trajectory of pain, purpose, and positioning in some sense. It goes from her memories of herself, first through her own eyes, then through her experiences with her mother, and then through her need to have a different experience. I love how it flows through the topics with raw honesty, serious presence, and even bits of curiosity. It's like you get to follow Gigi through her life, both as the observer and as the one having the experience. That was the part that I was just like, oh my gosh. There's love, there's loss, there's pain, there's disconnect, there's reflection, there's realization, there's spiritual connection, and just some real life rain, you know, that I think so many of us will connect to in our own lives. And then I want to start page 13. Going right in. It says, her childhood was shaped by chaos and love. Adored and overprotected, she was taught to study, fear God, and be quiet. Her mother heard voices that no one else could hear and saw things that no one else could see. After a while, her mother's instability accumulated and overlapped until there was no way to see past it. No one addressed it. That, for me, was important. No one addressed it. Self-appointed, she was the one who minded the gaps, cleaned up the messes, apologized, got lost in managing her mother's extremes. She felt responsible for her mother's behavior and handily designed her existence to compensate for it. She wanted people to feel comfortable all the time, even at her own expense. Dude, like, I mean, I don't know if I could, like, show my goosebumps.
Yeah.
But I feel like that is so, when I did the review of the book, I said that you spoke on my behalf. And that's how it felt, because I know so many of us have mama issues You know, in some of us in ways that we haven't gotten over, and then some of us like you and I, where we are constantly healing. You know, and the healing just looks different at different times, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like healing, but we share the narrative and we kind of take our mothers off the hook in a sense for being who they are, and then we start to look at them as women, you know, first and foremost. And I feel like you did that in a way that allowed other women who might be going through their own healing to recognize that, look, my mother is this woman, like I'm this woman going through this thing, and I don't have to become her, and I also don't have to constantly make her the person at fault for whatever I'm dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got. That's what I got.
It is. It's interesting because when you're a child in that moment, there's the part of you that's just, you know, you accept the reality that's you're presented with because you're a child. And you don't know, you start to notice that your situation is different maybe than other people's, but you still have this sort of aura around your parents. And you just think that they know something you don't, that if they, you know, if they say X, Y, and Z, then X, Y, and Z must be true. So it was hard for me to really grow up, and I had these different realities in my head. I had my mother's world, and I always call, like, you know, a lot of times when I write about it, I call it the Twilight Zone. Like, I had to get on her reality to deal with her, and I knew somewhere inherently that it didn't feel true for me, but that's your mother, right? So, you know, you have that world, and then I have the world where I'm at school, when I'm with my friends, and I'm at church, and then I had, in your words, like the inner little girl, right? That place in you that kind of knows about itself, but you're just so young and inexperienced that you just don't trust it yet, but that voice is always there. So it was kind of challenging, and, you know, as I grew through different stages, I did start to see my mother as a human being, and not so much, and even though there wasn't a name for her condition all through, you know, growing up, I knew that there was something more to it than just her being all over the place. I knew there was more to it. Just in that guttural, instinctive place, I knew, but I couldn't put a name on it until she probably wasn't diagnosed until I was about 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, so all of those years was kind of in her space and in your space and trying to make sense of it all. And I think what's so powerful is, as you continue throughout the book, it isn't just this blame, oh my God, and now I'm finally myself. As I said, it's like, as I read it, I was the observer, but in a sense, I was also having the experience, because my narrative had so many points of similarity and then also some stark differences. And both of those are such a beautiful blend to, you know, to really work on healing. Because for me, my inner little girl has always been the place of trust. Like, she knew, and she was very in touch, and that's who I call on now when I get kind of like, well, I don't know, you know, like, I call on her. She's like, yes, we do. You know, if we don't know what this is, we know that it doesn't feel good, and so it's like women get to see both of those spaces, because Gigi now and Gigi then are the same but different. You know, it's like you continue to take charge of your experience and say, yeah, but I mean, there's some wording in here that you use that I just, where's one? Where she says, you say, she doesn't know exactly why, but today is different. She feels unstoppable. She wakes up that morning with the fog, the knowing, the empty bed, and the silence, but she welcomes it. She's been staying home from work, mending her heart and soul. It's like the healing is happening in the middle of the thing, over and over and over and over again.
Come back to it.
Yeah, like, just yes. Just yes. That's encouraging, I think, and it also allows us to feel sad when we need to feel sad. You know what I mean? Like, there's no apology for you feeling how you felt throughout the process, and even now. That's important.
I really wanted to capture that, because I know pretty much all women can relate to this type of healing in some way, whether it was related to a family-ish situation or a lover or whatever it is, even a friendship. There's good days and there's bad days. And there are days when, I think I mentioned in the book as well, the sadness feels really good and healthy and cleansing, and you're like, you know, you write your poems, you listen to your music, and you just know something's happening
Yep.
within you. You know, it's funny because I've always been this very intensely happy and very intensely sad person at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know that or acknowledge it until I read that somewhere. Another woman
Yeah.
wrote it and said something about, you know, just being this happy and sad, and that's okay. And you
Yeah.
know, you read something, you're like, oh yeah,
Yes. Oh, okay.
it's okay.
Yes. Permission.
That's right. And I wanted to capture that, and that's why I try to take the reader through that stream of consciousness where you have moments where you feel really powerful and you know that this is going to end up well and that you're going to be strong from it. And then you have other days where you're like, well, hold up, because I let this happen and I let that happen and I'm mad today.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how it is. It's just a process.
Completely. And in your book, there's a lot of permission. As that word comes up, as you just mentioned that. And that's why these narratives are so important, because we give ourselves permission to heal, because you did a lot of that. You did, you know, I call it healing out loud. Mm-hmm. Some of us are called to that, like women from our tribe. You know, I always say I'm constantly seeking my tribe, you know, so that I don't feel crazy, that I know that I have the support, and that the times where I do feel crazy, I'm okay with it. You know, all of that is all of me. Yes. You know, it's like, I feel like feelings have gotten such a bad rap. You know, people like, man, what was all up in my feelings? Like that's not a good thing. Like, what else am I? I am a collective of constantly changing feelings. So if I'm hiding from that, who am I? And how do I express what I need in a moment? You know, how do I even access what I need in a moment, much less express it? And I feel like your book does a great job of just giving us life. You know, not even in the sense of like the slang term giving me life, but really showing us experiences of life and saying, this is how I felt, and I need you to understand that right now I'm okay with all of those feelings, because here's what they do for me. They take me through myself like a fever. It shows up, and I can either take something and be like, no, my God, a fever could turn into something else. So I could be like, what is this a symptom of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that. And how am I going to respond to it?
Exactly, because we can't do anything about how we feel, I think, but we can definitely do something about what we do with how we feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is part of really when you start feeling like a grown-ass woman. Like, my feelings are all over the place.
Yes.
But I choose how I respond to them, and I just don't, you know, I'm just not blindly responding to things. I'm like, you set an intention, you know, you can just, your day could be up and down.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, those kind of, you know, that's what to capture in the book, you know, your past or a present situation. Okay, feel what you feel. Don't try to ignore it or push past it.
Yeah.
You choose, over time you learn how to choose wisely how you want to respond to that feeling, how you want to deal with it.
Yeah. That's great. And that was very evident throughout the book. So I think that for any woman or man, really, you know, I always talk, a lot of these things are human experiences. You know, and it's through the lens of the feminine, but they're human experiences. And for those of us who are called to the written word, it's an opportunity not only for us to heal, but it's that same permission granting.
Right.
And then it's also just that tribe thing to just say there are so many other women out there who are reflecting, not from the space of blame. And even if it is sometimes from the space of blame, we go through that. We don't get stuck there, which is important. And then we allow ourselves to be compassionate, not just with the person who was like the object of the blame, be it our mother or a lover or a friend or whomever, but also from the space of being compassionate with our own selves, you know, throughout the process. And I felt like your book did such a great job of reminding us, not stuffing it down our throats in this sort of like guru from the mountaintop way, but from very much like a look at me. I understand. Here is my version of that experience, but I'm not going to beat up on myself for who I am and who I am not. But I'm just exploring this space, and here's what I'm learning, and here's how I'm using that. And I invite you to look into that for yourself. You know, I really appreciate when a writer does that. Doesn't try to force anything on me, just gives me some space to kind of look through your thing, and you just kind of held my hand and said, come, let me take you through my journey.
It's
and this is what
storytelling.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Right.
think that that's really, when I started probably about 6 or 7 years ago, really working on really working on myself. I read a lot of self-help books. I read a lot of spirituality, and I still do books
Yeah.
about spirituality. And through writing and finding my voice, I realized that like straightforward self-help or personal development gets boring for me.
Mm-hmm.
You start feeling like, okay, you hear these same things, these same phrases, and
Yeah.
a place for that, and I do appreciate it. But I realized that I was nervous about the book for a while there, actually, Akilah, because I was like, oh, it's so weird. Like, it's going to take a certain kind of woman
I
to get
know.
this.
Been there. Yeah.
I'm thankful that I didn't try to make a straightforward book, because that wasn't what it was in my heart to make. I wanted it to be esoteric, and I wanted it to really, through storytelling,
Yeah.
still get the same effect of reading a book called, I don't know, how to get over, no, not how to get over a breakup, but just how to
Yeah,
deal with
it had a
whatever.
how-to component. Yes. No, I
Right.
hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want it. I don't. The straightforward just kind of like, I wanted it to be unique in that way, for better or for worse, And I think that through
Did that.
storytelling, women really can connect. I connected, I know we'll talk about your book in a minute, but I connected with your story even more so than, all of the helpful advice and all of that you give is great, but when you pair it with a story,
Yeah.
it just really, really gets in your bones.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that. This is a note too, even for writers, because I know some of the people who may be viewing this now, or, will look at it later, are also authors, emerging authors. And there's always so much anxiety around the share, anxiety around the give, anxiety around the way, the format, because there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. And we're artists, and yes, you have to understand, like, if you talk about a visual artist, acrylics versus, I don't know, watercolors. I'm just
Right.
random words that I hear my husband use. I don't even know if it's like the right thing, but you can know all of those things, but at some point you just have to put your brush to the canvas, and you have to feel your way through the experience. And I think women like us who say, I don't want a straightforward story, because I don't even talk like that. I don't experience things like that.
Right,
So if
right.
I did that, I would be, I have this phrase about presenting versus being present that I use all the time to remind myself. And if I write like that, this is my 5th book, and I don't have one book that is, well, there is a Life Design 101 that's kind of like a here are the steps, because it's a workbook.
Sure, and that's a place. Yeah, that's what's for.
Yeah, it's a workbook, but everything else is the same type of conversation. I'm going to go in and out of different things, and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, here. But I thought about it all, and I felt it through, even more importantly, because if I focus on the thinking, then I'll probably be more formulaic. So it's for those of you who are emerging authors, and if you haven't written your first piece yet, or you've written 15 and you want to do something different, I think we have to really honor the work the way that it shows up, and not the way we think it should look or sound. Because there's a magic in surrendering to the story. And I don't think you can do that if you try to make it the way that it should be. Yeah?
There's a part in your book where you mentioned, the being inspired by other artists and other writers, I hadn't never thought of it the way you put it in there, but basically how, yes, use that to, feel that fellowship with other artists, that's wonderful, and that, we share each other's energy. But at the end of the day, your art has to come from your own, and it's interesting because, I feel like you're my, I don't know, spiritual, like, I'm like, oh, I want to be like Akilah. But I really get, because I haven't been doing this for as long, but when I first released the book, I got into that comparison thing.
Yeah, I understand that.
I felt some kind of way about that, but then I thought about, look, think about, like, artists who sing, right? You have someone who sings like Jennifer Hudson.
Yep.
Then you have someone who sings like, I don't know,
Macy Gray.
They're all over the place.
Yep.
And the thing that makes each of them special is their own unique voice. You come on the radio, that voice, and you like it or you don't, and that, thinking of it that way, because I'm really into, we all love our music, and I love dance, and I said it's not about, there's this scale of like, oh, you fit, like, I don't need to fit myself somewhere. I just need it to, the more organic I can be,
Yeah.
the better work will be and the more rewarding it'll be. So that has helped me just sort of let go of that.
Great.
This is my first book and you're on number 5. So I'm hoping that as I continue that I will even give it a second thought,
Yeah. And for me, I give it second, third, fourth, fifth. I give it many, many thoughts, but I always, I say it all the time, I really try to make a practice, especially since I've become a parent, and I have 2 daughters. So
Right.
I just have like constant reminders and opportunities to be present in that way. And I say like, it's okay for me to explore, but I always need to remember how to come back to myself.
Yes.
Like my end product, whether that's a sentence or a blog post or a book or a speech or whatever, if the end product is from a space of me coming back to myself, I don't care if I took the circuitous route. I don't care if I read Toni Morrison and was like, oh my God, I'm clearly not ready to write anything ever in life. Put that down. Don't even do blog posts, because I go there sometimes.
I do too.
I like a very good friend of mine is just an amazing Deneen Milner. Like multiple times. Yeah. And Deneen is like a dear friend of mine. And sometimes when even reading her blog posts, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, at least I can just comment and like I do that. But then I always come back to myself. I'm a writer. I can't even help it. So I'm going to write it, and then I read it, and I get charged up. And I discover the story by, like, leaving the distractions, which is all that is. That's just fear and distraction, by leaving the distraction behind. And then I can appreciate a Deneen. I can appreciate a Toni Morrison. I can appreciate a whoever and appreciate an Akilah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah. That's the work.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's sometimes our minds wander or deceive us a little bit, but you come back to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had something else. I know we've been on your book, but I really have something else that I want to read from your book. Here, let me go to it. Here it is. Okay, so page 20. When we believe that we're meant to suffer, and I'll say why this is so important for me to share after I read it, we attract situations that feed this belief. Our relationships mirror our most intimate personal reflections of ourselves. If we are empty, we can't fill ourselves up with someone and become full, or solve problems with the same logic we use to create them, or deny the parts of ourselves we don't like, or pretend we don't care when we do, or seek perfection over sincerity. We can't make ourselves too responsible trying to be everything to everyone. We can't change the stories of defeat we tell ourselves without first embracing our underground, our secrets, the very source of these stories. The underground is not a hopeless place. It's the denial of it that weakens us, makes us feel incomplete, and compromises our sense of self. She has been looking everywhere but inside, where original sin and worldly thought run rampant. She was taught, deny, repress, deny. Don't look into their eyes. Don't look into your own soul. Take what I feed you. So she did. She took what everyone fed her, eating to the point of excess, and still she is starving. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like, who wouldn't connect with that on so many levels, in so many different areas? That is soul feeding. That forces you to put the book down and look in the mirror and be like, hey.
Think about it.
Feel it out. Face it. Going inside it's the same thing with feelings. Like, going inside is, we've been taught that that's not okay. That's what you do when you're not okay. Yeah. But to me, that's what I do to remain okay, to come back to myself. And I'm so glad you put that there.
That's the shift, I think, that will change things for, the women that I, correspond with through blogging.
Yeah.
So many women, their issue is just that. They just, somewhere at a deep level, they don't like themselves, or they don't feel worthy, or they don't feel deserving. And I think for me, that really came from, I looked in myself and I saw things that I had been told were bad, that I had been, my mother, one of her really intense outlets, I guess, with her with her issues was religion. So it was constantly, at a young age, if you're told, if you think a boy is cute, you're a sinner, you're going to go to hell. Like these very harsh things to like a 12-year-old who's like, oh, well, dang.
Right.
I can't, and I can't control my, trying to control my thoughts. I'm like, oh, I have these thoughts. Oh my God, I'm a horrible person. I can't trust myself. And so to grow up into womanhood, not being sure, am I a good, this very good, bad, black, white, right, wrong.
Yep.
Where do I stand? Which side am I on? And somewhere along the way, you get kind of in the middle, and you're kind of like, well, I'm not going to define myself either.
Yes.
On either side, I'm not going to define myself that way, and I'm going to go into that place that I've hidden away, I've pushed away, that dark place, and I'm going to go in there and see what if it's so bad. I'm going to go in there.
Yep.
I'm going to dig it up.
Yep.
And then when you do, and you kind of realize, like,
yeah. I'm cool with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Like, and you start to realize that a lot of those things that you thought were so bad and so dark and so horrible is because somebody told you that. Somebody, like, and you really, it can take a while, it can really, really take a while, and maybe it's something that we do for the rest of our lives, I don't know, but you have to question when you feel yourself beating yourself up in your head to pause and see where that voice is coming from. Where did that voice originate? And I tell, like, my coaching clients, like, write it down, and it might not come to you right that minute, but try to drill down on it. Like, where did that come from? Who was the first person who told you that? Where did you get that from, that it's bad for you maybe to feel jealous of another woman? Oh, I feel jealous of this woman, so I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
Really? You don't think all women feel jealousy or feel any dark emotion?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's that was my intention, to really, just like you said, every few pages put the book down and just go look in the mirror or journal, or reflect however you like to reflect, and just really, really think about what goes on in your head and where it's coming from, and how you can make it work for you.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely, and how it makes you feel. I know for me, I don't always know where it's coming from. Like, I can't always identify, the genesis of it. But what I can always identify is how it makes me feel.
Yes.
How it makes me feel. So if I have that moment of like, why they chose her, then I check that and say, well, hell, I don't know where the hell it came from, but I don't like it.
Right.
And then I ask myself that question, but how do I want to feel? Well, I want to feel like I'm being supportive of other women, or if I'm not into what she's doing, then I want to feel like I can just disconnect from that, but I don't have to throw her shade.
Right.
So then I can be with. So there it is again, as you said, not necessarily the feeling, but like how you choose to deal with it or how you choose to react to it. And that for me is what's empowering, because sometimes I may never get to the source of the thing, but I can always feel myself out in it.
Yes, absolutely. And you can cling to what makes you feel good and what makes you feel strong, and you can let go of what doesn't make you feel strong.
Yep, over and over again, every damn minute, until you become practiced at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have questions for you.
Sure.
And all you want, but wow. One question that I had, and it's pretty early in the book, when you kind of had that turning point. You were at Sabbath dinner, and you said a prayer with a little hint in the prayer. And I guess my question around that part was, and for whoever's watching, if you've read the book or not, the younger version of Akilah, Ina, is at dinner with her family, and she's having a rough time just wanting to get out and change her experience. And her dad, always her advocate, basically gives her a little message through a prayer that he is releasing her and encouraging her to do what she has to do. And I think I wrote it down. He says, even an animal as small as a doctor bird with a wounded wing can escape a big mongoose if she can believe in her right to be free. And that was a turning point for this young girl, 17?
Yeah, at that time, yeah. Hmm.
I guess my question would be, at that moment, like, how did you know so certainly that that was his intention with that? And then how did you know what your steps were going to be from that? And then one more question before you answer. You
Hmm.
also made a comment that you were either going to leave
Yeah,
or another way to escape was to die. And
yeah.
I'll speak on that a little bit.
Sure, sure, sure. So the first thing is, I'll give a little bit of the overall picture that the book, Radical Self-Expression Manifesto, um, takes a woman through. It takes you through the journey of a little girl, all the way up to womanhood, and really just these different points where she started to understand the importance of exploring and expressing whoever she was, right? Because she had been stifled in so many ways. And Ina's story came from a collective of different women's stories, so it's not my literal story.
Okay, okay.
So there are parts of it that are exactly my story,
Okay.
parts of it that are exactly my mother's story. There are parts of it that are exactly my paternal grandmother's story. And then there are parts from just different women that I've connected with because I coached. I was a coach for many years, and I still do it on request. And it's just a collective of all the feelings. So I took the feelings and just kind of felt my way through a story. And as I say all the time, like people who have read it say, wow, well, how did you know this piece and that piece? I've been working on this book for like 3 years. And originally it was just a nonfiction piece. So I have this same story in a totally different format with a totally different ending and all of that. And so that scene at the table was me as the person who the story was coming through, trying to decide what would be both the scariest and the safest way for Ina to take charge of the experience she was having. Because I knew she needed permission, and I knew she couldn't get it from her mother because that wasn't the dynamic of the relationship. And the doctor bird, the hummingbird, that's our national bird. I'm Jamaican, that's the national bird. And I always, when I see them and the colors and the speed at which they fly, like the rate that their wings fly, like you can't even see it with the human eye. Like it looks like they're just sitting there, yeah, but they fly so fast and they're so small and so powerful. And I wanted to reflect that feeling of, as insignificant as something can be in the grand scheme of things, like we can feel so insignificant sometimes and powerless. There is never an opportunity where you can choose, where you have to only acquiesce. Like acquiescence is never, ever, ever your only option. So I wanted to portray an example where someone who felt so small could use another thing that was so small to make a really big, bold, scary choice.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where that came from. And then the part of death, because I'd like to operate from a space of urgency, even now with the term radical self-expression. Radical is not a baby step thing. When I make a decision to be radical about self-care and self-love, it isn't from a space of, well, let me see if everyone's okay with this.
Right.
It's urgent. It's the house is on fire. Get the hell out. You don't have time to pick out the albums or whatever. You leave, and then you breathe really deeply, and then you back away from the burning space. And I wanted to reflect that in that point.
Right. The intensity of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I did neglect to give an overall, just the way your book made me feel in my, just the summary of the book as well. I think that, again, I went into reading it not fully knowing what to expect or what I would get out of it. And I love how, so it starts off with the story of a young girl, and it gives you such a beautifully detailed background of this young girl's circumstances. And obviously I could most certainly relate to it with having, from the outside, would seem like a very stable, nurturing home environment. Like, and at times, just being that young girl in that environment, maybe even feeling like, I'm so miserable and I'm unhappy, but I don't have it so bad.
Yeah.
Because, in comparison, but there was a lot of emotional turmoil going on in that girl due to the environment she was growing up in, and taking that into young adulthood, and just knowing that listening to the inner girl, the inner little girl that said, this is not, what did you call it? The not it shit. This is not it. I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm not. And I'm going to find a way out. And just that resolve set the tone for just such a beautiful life. And the way you made the story go through, interjecting periodically with, a pulse check. Like, how do you feel? And reflect this back to your own life. And then into young adulthood, and just that journey of, finding yourself in Atlanta on your own for the first time in your whole life. Not just a new city, a new country. And all of the experiences, you captured it so well, because I felt like I could be in the head of that young girl. And the adventures that you went on, and then, going into relationships. And we all have been through, we have to, I know women that really haven't been in a lot of relationships, and I think it's tough for them, because you see yourself most clearly in your relationships, and
certainly.
You find yourself through those. So even though you went through a lot of pain, you really explained it in a way that shows that same resolve, starting with that little girl, that resolve is the commonality, like, just throughout that. Okay, I grew up, I had got some bumps and bruises, but I figured it out and I moved on. One thing too that really connected me with the beautiful disruption was the part in California when you were going through a second divorce, or the character in the story is going through another divorce. Just that there's something poignant about when you're going through something and you just get up and you look in the mirror and you see this woman, and you said something like, you would not know by looking at you that you were going through so much pain on the inside, because you look so glowing and healthy on the outside, because you've been taking so much care of yourself. And you really turn to personal wellness. Channel all of the angst and the hurt from your relationship. And I really especially latched onto that, because I think with we're going to go through pain in life, we're going to go through hurt. And what I really try to encourage people and share with people is you can channel it in healthy, positive, constructive ways, even when you're just at the bottom and you're suffering,
Yep.
I loved that. I loved that you shared that, and that you had the presence of mind to do that. I'm wondering at that point, I know when you moved back to Jamaica, you had really gotten into changing your diet and all that, but even back when you were in California, how did you, I guess, was it just that's the lifestyle you were already living, or was it a result of, okay, I can't control this over here, but I can control how I treat my body, and I'm gonna be very healthy on this side? How did that come about?
So it was actually a little bit of both. So that story came from it came from a person in my life, someone who's very, very close to me, who, in a sense, she was already down that path.
Okay.
Everything hit for her. And at the summit, I'm going to see if she's willing to share it, because she'll be there. That whole section was inspired by her. She realized that was the only thing, just as you said, that she could control. And she says that were it not for that, she knows that people would be at her funeral and not on her phone. Because it's, you recognize, there's this saying that how you do anything is how you do everything. And in a broad sense, that is very true, because when you start to be more present in any area of your life, it magnifies the areas that you are not present. And so for her, as she started to disconnect from her relationship out of necessity, not because she wanted to, because it just kind of happened to her, the relationship side, she made a choice repeatedly, like we all have an opportunity to do. She didn't just wake up one day and that was it. She woke up one day and decided, and then 5 minutes later she decided again. And then she decided whether she would go exercise or go lie down and cry. Maybe she would cry first and then go exercise. And that she wouldn't drown her sorrows in a big pot of, white rice with pepper. Instead she would go for a run and then maybe have a nice salad with a tablespoon of rice on it and reclaim herself in that way. It gives you different opportunities to be present when you're in that hurt space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I wanted to draw upon. And as you said, to remind women that, look, even in the hurt space, even when it's sadness, like sadness actually has a feel-good component. You can use it. You
Mm-hmm.
can actually use it, and you can take it out on the track or the, or the whatever. Like, so I wanted to show that too, because wellness needs to look like, it doesn't need to look like perfection. It just needs to look like you being present in each moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to just give an example of how a woman was managing to do that, even alongside such tremendous heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that that's very, very important for, any woman who sometimes we become so attached, so attached. It could be to a job, it could be to a man, and I think that that's part of being a human.
Yeah.
We become attached to things,
Yeah.
and I think that as we grow more in tune with ourselves, we realize that you cannot be more attached to anything. You cannot be more attached to something outside of yourself than you are to your own health and well-being.
Right. Exactly, Gigi.
So it can be tough to get there at first. It's all here. It's all here. It's just a mental shift that, because when we're nurturing, we like to take care of things, we like to take care of people. Like sometimes we're, clinging to an appearance or a status or how we're viewed, and we get all of our value from that. That's so dangerous. It's so dangerous to value that higher, you know?
And you touched on that in the book as well, as you were talking about just wanting to make everybody comfortable, and so I really appreciated that you did that. And I think that mental shift, there it is again. It goes back to why I'm so glad that some of us are willing to write the messy books, the not properly formatted books, because that's how that's how life is for a lot of us. It isn't chapter 1, but
Right.
it's like chapter 9 and then chapter 4, and then I relive chapter 4 like 15 times. You know what I'm saying? Like that's real life. And when you take on something like your well-being, not even from just the point of exercise or diet, because those are important parts, but your emotional well-being, and then you start to have that transition into what you're putting into your body, you recognize the places where you're addicted to not necessarily a thing, but the feeling behind the thing. And then conversely, you recognize when you're addicted to the actual thing. So the example is food. Last year, July, for the whole month, I did a fruitarian feast. So I was completely fruitarian. I only ate, if you could pick it off a tree, like it was just raw fruits and vegetables for the whole month. I thought that I was doing it for the food thing. I thought I was doing it to detox and lose, that 10 pounds and be extra cute. Like, that was really my thing. And then I also felt like I knew there was a spiritual component. Like I knew that I felt like I was mediocre in a lot of ways, but my mediocrity, and this might sound stuck up, but that's how I feel like my mediocrity is higher than most people's. So I coast on it sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually great. Okay, so you get that.
I do.
Yeah, okay. So that is a reality that I connect to as well. That when I'm half-assing it, in most environments, that's some people's really good. And then if I'm honest, then I started to coast on that and be like, well, it's my regular ass, not everybody's ass. So, blah, blah, blah. So I knew that. And so that was my inner little girl being like, but I think we can do even better. And it's like, okay, take a challenge. And, I didn't want to do a 5K because who wants to run? So I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do something really hard. I'm just going to eat fruits and vegetables. And I love chicken, so it was going to be tough. And so I did it. And then I recognized that it wasn't about the love of certain foods. One thing, it was chemical. They're chemical addictions because of the foods. A lot of what we eat now is chemistry and not food. And I recognized that chemistry. And so as I was able to slowly disconnect through eating a lot of green things and drinking a lot of water and eating a lot, live food exclusively, I realized all of the ways that I was not only taking in processed things, but I had turned really organic things in my life, like my writing, into a processed food thing. Like I was trying to write the structured things and trying to share from the spaces of what, topics were important in the public and da-da-da-da. And then I realized that I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to share what was relevant, like give my perspective on what was relevant. I just needed to share what I cared about.
Mm.
I needed to be more alive. And so through that experience with the food, I recognized the places that I also was processed and inorganic and GMO like a mug, you know? So, so it's like I feel like the book, in a sense, was also my way of exploring that, to say for other women, where are the spaces where you're thinking that it was about your mom or about these things, but it's really just that you've developed this pattern, and now you get to develop another pattern and have a different experience, and we don't care where it came from. We're just not connected to it anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in line with that. I think that one other thing that really hit home for me was the surviving versus thriving. That is another theme throughout the book, and obviously, the characters, the all the characters in the book are survivors, and they will remove themselves from a situation when it doesn't no longer feels right. And you move from, I think that all, we go through this. I know I went through a stage where I was like, I've, been through a lot. I'm a survivor and I'm going to get through it and blah, blah, blah. But when you put that in the book, in those words, I realized, okay, great. You get through things. You're resilient. I want to thrive, though. I don't always want to, feel like, oh, I have this badge. I have, these labels on myself. I had all these challenges, and look, I'm still here. Okay, great. But are you in a good place, though? And is that your claim to fame?
Right.
Do you always want to use that as a crutch, or, the victim? Oh, I went through this. And I mean, there was a time when I was really like, there's a lot of effed up stuff going on in my life, but, my mom has schizophrenia, so I'm doing all right, with that. I would really...
That was your regular ass, right? Yeah.
I was like, I should be really messed up based on how, like, what I went through, so I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
And I use that as an excuse, and I'm like, wow, I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. I want to really set an intention and go after that and know how I want to feel and do everything, even if it's interesting, like, this whole idea of purpose, right? So many people are like, oh, I just don't feel purposeful from day to day. And I think we overcomplicate it. I know I did for many years. We just overcomplicate it.
That's why. Oh, yeah. I still do it from time to time. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I do too. I'm like, oh, I have to reach at this point. There is no point you have to reach. There is no specific. I think that purpose and thriving, it's really about just staying in tune with that inner voice and getting rid of the stuff that blocks it for you.
Yes. Right? How do I want to feel? What would that look like right now? I have this wind analogy that I used in one of the other books. What do I need now? I think it was the one right before this. What do I need now?
Yes.
Just that question, just to stop in a moment and to give yourself permission to ask that question. Not just because you want to bring your awareness to it, but because you want an answer.
Yes.
What do I need now? And being okay with whatever that answer is, and honoring that answer and making that perfection in that moment.
Yeah. I wonder why so many women, if they do ask themselves that question, sometimes we block ourselves from going after whatever the answer is, though, right? Or I don't know if it's we feel we don't deserve it.
Yeah.
We make excuses as to why we can't have it.
Yeah. We do. I think that is, it's part societal, because certainly the general consensus is not that a woman gets to be happy. It's that she earns happiness. So if your family is well taken care of and your floors are clean and you cook in and you look great for being a mom, or you look great, or you are a mom. That's even another one. Like, every woman should be a mom, which is madness. Right. There are all of these shoulds and all of these things. There's like this checklist of things, and certainly there's a checklist for men too. But I will go out on a limb and say that for women, it's a longer checklist.
Yes.
And to go through that checklist in every moment before we earn the right to be happy. And so we have to. This is why I connect very deeply with movements like feminism. And people always like, so you're feminist or you're black feminist? I'm black. How can I not be, or a feminist or a womanist? Like, I understand the inequities that are here for women, and that we are a part of why that is perpetuated, and that we have to start to recognize the places where we feel guilty for needing time for ourselves, like asking that win question, what do I need now? And recognize that feeling of guilt around it and say, okay, so why do I feel like that? I feel like that because there it is. My daughters didn't finish their math today, and I didn't even get to clean, and I said I was going to clean, and it's been 3 days, and da, 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 da. You know, we go through all of these checklists, so that's why it's urgent. That's why it's radical. You got to put all that shit down, and you have to face yourself and say, but how do I want to feel? If I am working like this and doing all of this because I want to feel like I can go to a coffee shop and hang out with a good book, that's how I want to feel. If that's what I feel connected to, I'm going to go do that. Like, even if I have to push myself out that door, I'm going to do that, because you have to get familiar with the feeling of good. We have to get familiar with the feeling like, I feel good right now.
Yes, yeah.
We have to we have to work that muscle, because a lot of us are taught that that's not something you get to. It's something you earn, and someone puts a badge on you. You did good today, woman. Now you can go have your coffee or whatever. We have to make those moments for ourselves and I always tell people to get really comfortable feeling guilty. Because that's the only way. There is no around guilt. Like, you have to go through it. You have to be like, I feel really bad. And then I'll call, my husband's name is Chris, and I'll call Chris like 15 times. Everything cool? I'll send a text, you know, and it's like, but then the more I do that, the less I need to do it. Yeah. So it may start out with 15 texts and 2 phone calls, and then eventually it's 1 call, right? You know, and that's progress. And then sometimes I'll just come back riddled with guilt, and then there are other moments where I don't feel any at all. But all of that is my practice, and I will continue to practice because I have to.
Yeah. There's a quote in your book. You said, she tended to hide her feelings for as long as her environment would allow, and then lash out when a trigger painted her into a corner and forced her to face something head on. And I think that in a way ties in, just because we deny ourselves from those good feelings. We let guilt and all these other things overshadow it, and certain things just get bigger. Resentment gets bigger. That self-denial, all the things that manifest from those feelings just get bigger. And we lash out or have some type of breakdown, or who knows what we do. And I think that so many of us do that. We just kind of let the elephant in the corner get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't get around it. But it could have been addressed early on if you just own those feelings, own how you want to feel, and go after it.
Absolutely. And there's never an opportunity to not address that. That's the good news. So if you find that you are that woman who's constantly doing that, or that man who's constantly doing that, you always have an opportunity to face that thing and say, yeah, I connect with what she's saying. I feel like that now. How do I want to feel? You know, what do I want to do differently? And that's the thing that I think is really important in both of our pieces, that we talk about the privilege and the right, because it's both a privilege and a right, because some of us die without healing. You know, we know that woman who lived and died in that broken space. But we don't have to be that woman at any age, at any stage, at any opportunity. You have the chance to look at yourself in the mirror and say, but how do I want to feel? And then what might that look like? And what step can I take? And for some of us, it needs to be a big, drawn-out, month-long fruitarian thing. And then for somebody else, it might be a simple thing like, I'm going to write out how I feel, or I'm going to get on the phone with somebody and have that conversation. Or if they call me, I'm going to say that I don't want to talk today. You know, or I'm going to, you know, whatever that thing is. There's so many things that you can do to be in the energy of what it means to feel good and present.
Yes.
And then you just practice that to every little time you have the opportunity.
It really is practice. Yeah. And I think that we also, from the creative perspective, and I would be curious to hear if you've gone through this. I read something recently that spoke about creative people, and we love that creative process, right? We can get lost in it, and we work so hard on a project. And sometimes there's that blockage too, and this comes with the whole letting yourself feel good. She compared it to sowing, but then sort of denying yourself the reaping part. So I can say that even with the Beautiful Disruption, I worked on that book for, I don't know, however many months I worked on it, and it was my thing. When I first quit my job, I was like, I'm going to write this book, and it was my thing. And I'm not saying that I published it and didn't promote it or do whatever, but I'll tell you, I had issues with reaping. I love sewing. I had issues with reaping. I felt like I don't want to force it on anybody. Like, I just had this stuff.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And I guess one question I have for you is, did you go through that at all with any of your creative projects that you've worked on, where you will go from, oh, I created this, push it out. Create this, I'm jumping from project to project, but you're not really, once you finish the project, giving it the legs or giving the time to sharing it, or to really seeing it all the way through before you're involved. And I think that that's just a challenge with your, I call it creative ADD sometimes. I just feel like I'm all over the place and I start things and I can't finish them. Did you have that experience at all in your journey?
That's a great question. I am that way, and for me it feels right, because that's how I am. Like, I'm not a lean all the way in for a very long time person. I'm like a butterfly. Like, I flit. I am a flitter. And I own my seriously. So for me, my art, so like if it were a painting, so once I was done with it, then I'm not the person to walk around in the marketplace like, this was produced here and da-da-da-da-da. That's not what feels good for me. That part doesn't feel good. So I just try not to stay there. Right. My body of work is not each book or each course or each whatever. My body of work is my ability to explore and express how I'm feeling in a moment. And so if I write Radical Self-Expression Manifesto and then I publish it, I did what I needed to do. And there are times where something will come up and I will schedule a hangout, or I will do an entire summit around the book, and that feels, because it feels good. But then other books where once it's done, I reach out to my core tribe, and I probably do a couple of workshops, because that's my thing, and I like that. The last book I did before this, I co-wrote with a really good friend of mine, Katrina M. Howard. We actually became really good friends as a result of writing the book. And neither of us wanted to do that. We both left very formal corporate environments to do this sort of work. And so the part that felt good, one of the characters, the main character in the book, went on a retreat. And we're like, well, that's going to be our work. We're going to host a retreat. And we couldn't even, it was just like we laughed about it, and then other people started asking about it. So we did a retreat, and we did our first international retreat last year in Jamaica, and then we haven't spoken about the book anywhere since. If someone asks, it'll come back up. But it's, I spent a lot of years, Gigi, beating myself up. That for me feels the same thing like writing a proper book. I don't, if it doesn't feel good, I just don't want to anymore if I don't. That's the inner little girl thing.
I have like the heart eyes, like on the emoticon. You put the hearts where your eyeballs are. I'm like, oh, this is like so refreshing. It is. I just, that just made me feel so free.
Good. And I'm not saying that's the right answer.
No,
but that's my answer.
It really brings us back to, I think we've said this a few times throughout this call, that you have to constantly kind of analyze the things you think or what you might be beating yourself up about, as to, like you said, does it feel good? Like, if it feels right for you and it feels like this is your journey and this is how your journey is going to go, it's always like the constant benchmarking and comparing, and I should be doing it this way, I'm supposed to do this. There might come a time where you do things differently, but maybe that's the different part of your journey. How you feel right now. I think that I left 12 years of corporate work, and I came out and had all this time to write and to create. I didn't want to be bothered with anything else but writing and creating. I was just like, I have probably I don't know how many backed up books in me, and I just wanted to do that.
And you did that, and celebrate that, and then let that be the thing. And the other thing is, there it is again, the importance of a tribe and community. If you feel that, because certainly there is some value to going from idea to market and then giving yourself space before you go from idea to market with the next thing. There's certainly some value in that. So if you feel like that's something you want to do, hire a person to do that. You know what I mean? Like when we did our last book, How She Got Free, Katrina, that's a part of her thing. Like she knows the whole, the work around the bestseller process, and she did that work, and then I did the other work with just refining the story. So we stayed in our lanes. I worked in that lane for a very long time, not because it was my lane, but it's because it's something I could do. Now I really do my very best to not do shit just that because I can do it, but I really just try to do what I want to do. And I really try to avoid things that feel like work. And sometimes when I say that, people give me the stink eye, but I really try to avoid the feeling of work. I don't like that feeling. I feel very disconnected to work. I feel like my ancestors held that down. That's not my job. You know what I mean? And my job is to create and to feel good and to feel out loud and to provide spaces where other women can explore and express that feeling as well. So that doesn't feel like marketing. I can't spend 6 months on a 15-step, and I've been there. I used to, like Marie Forleo and, the people who tell you about the business process behind it. There's certainly merit to it. It's not my thing. I don't go pineapples. It's not my thing.
I think for anybody who's on the call or who sees this video who is, contemplating that, finding that harmony between kind of what needs to be done and what they feel like doing and what inspires them and what feels like work. I think it's really important to give yourself a chance, especially if you're coming from, or some people are still balancing it off. Like for me, coming from doing a quick shift from working in a corporate environment for 12 years, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm an artist now, right?
Yep. And that was exactly my experience.
And that was yours too. I think that it's important to give yourself a chance to just feel your way through this new part of your journey. Because honestly, if I think back to when I first, put on my big girl suit and my heels and went to work in corporate America, it took me a little while to
exactly
footing, right? No, it wasn't like the first week I was like, oh, I know exactly, like all the little culture things and the way, you have to kind of get that, I don't know what to call it, your footing,
Right, like you find,
your style, the way you approach things. So I think that we want what we want, and we want it now. We want to feel comfortable. We want to feel like, that we have all this experience under our belt. But really, I know for me, it's been less than a year. So I have to give myself a chance and get used to this new lifestyle. I mean, I love it. Give myself a chance to feel out. Like, for example, this summer, my kids will be out of school next week. I'm like, okay, I don't want mommy to be writing a book this summer. I want mommy to be more doing other types of things, doing workshops, doing events, doing things where like I can be more mobile with, with my kids or, whatever. So this is my first summer doing it. So just that's an example of feeling it out, and
a great example.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you said that, especially in speaking to other women who might be on that journey as well, and be like, well, why don't I know this, or why don't I feel this? You have to. There's no shortcut to these things. I mean, I've been 9 years, right? Because my oldest daughter is 10. Wow. So like 8 years since I left corporate, and my footing, it shifts too. So when I wrote the very first book, and I was still like half in, half out when I wrote that very first book, and my first book, The Executive Mama Pocket Guide, was just me trying to figure out, like, am I tripping? Are there other women? And the book is really just a series of interviews with women who were doing work that they loved and had also become mothers. Because I was like, well, I know how to, lean in on my work, and now I'm going to be responsible for a person. And I kind of don't want to do that. And this whole law thing, I realized that I was doing that not because I wanted to, but because that was how I validated, everything else. So, well, I'm going to be an attorney. So,
Right.
And then I was like, I don't even want to. Like, I just want to write things and then talk about it. Like, so I just figured out that, and then that meant that I wrote about that, and then as I continued, then it was entrepreneurship, and that was like the big thing, and then it was being emotionally well, which is still a big part of the big thing. But then I realized over time that I couldn't care less about the entrepreneurial side. Yes, entrepreneurialism is one way towards radical self-expression and emotional wellness, but I don't want to help you with that, and and I don't want to talk about that ad nauseum. I care about the woman behind the work. I care about how you feel when you're doing what you're doing, and that's my gift also. I'm learning how to help other women recognize the value of being with how they feel. And that had to come as a result of me being willing to do the thing where I was only coaching entrepreneurs and have events that were just for, spiritual entrepreneurship, and then recognizing that, then my partner Katrina came into my life because she does focus on women entrepreneurs in the spiritual space. And then I don't care nothing about that. I just care about how you feel. So the work and the way and the zone, you don't just walk in it. It actually becomes part of you. Like, it's both of them have an ecology, and then they become a part of one thing as you continue to take ownership of your voice.
Yes.
And there's no shortcut to that.
Yeah. Yep. I'm like cheesing from you. So true. It is so true. And it's such an evolution, You start off, I love how you kind of gave that, because you start off and you're just following those feelings as you go. You're following those passions, and it evolves. Like, just when I first started writing, I wasn't thinking about, I want women to use creativity to heal or I wasn't thinking about that at all.
Yeah.
But years down the process, that's what came about.
It came up, yep.
That's what came up. And I'm sure there's more to come, know.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I try to, when women say, I can't find my purpose, I'm like, if you focused on that, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Absolutely.
So take a step, see how that step feels. If you want to go hot, hot, warm, cold, go the warm, follow the love, follow the warm feelings.
Yep.
You will find things out that you never expected to find out. Things will come out of you that you never expected to come out of you.
Yep.
You will look back and say, oh my God, like, am I the same person?
Yep. And that's so true. If you think about most successful people will say that there's not one point where you don't hear them say, or there's not one person where at one point you've never heard them say, and I would have never imagined.
Yes.
Ellipses.
Always.
Like, even if they are like the Kanye West who said, I practiced my speeches because I knew I was going to. I've seen things with him where he said, I didn't know that it was going to be this. Or even Oprah, the guru of all things happiness, will say that, as much as she owned, took ownership, pardon the pun, took ownership, as much as she owned her voice early on, she didn't know she was going to open a school. I think it's in South Africa for girls. You have to follow your curiosity. If you don't feel, and that's my core value of all the things that I'm into. I prioritize love, I prioritize honesty, I prioritize self-expression, but my core value is curiosity. Because it never ever fails me. If I don't feel like I want to know where it goes, I just try to stay away. Because one, then it feels like work, which is not allowed. And then two, it's really hard for me to feel my way through something that I'm not curious about. You know what I mean? So it just goes right back to how do you want to feel. And for me, I want to feel really curious. I want to be like, what is this hangout going to be like? Oh my gosh, I want to know this about her book. And I want to look at her when I say this part. Right. So I knew I was supposed to do this because I remained curious. Then there are other things like other projects that I start. And then the curiosity is here at first. And then it's like, oh, okay. Right. That's what I needed. And then I move on. And we have to give ourselves permission to move on when we're no longer deeply curious about a thing. Because I think curiosity is that fever. It is that symptom of a deeper knowing of something.
And enthusiasm.
Exactly.
I mean, we as adults think like, I gotta be cool all the time. I can't be too excited. I can't, show how this thing makes me feel. Like, why not? Right? Why?
I couldn't if I tried.
Yeah, I'm trying to pay attention to where I do that. Like, I can remember times even like not wanting to say, I love this song because I thought it was a weird song and nobody else would like it.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
myself,
yeah.
listen to it like when
Start
you know,
giving like a 15-minute disclosure, right? I'm not saying such and such and such, but just hear me out. Like that's my thing, the disclosure. I
yeah.
don't I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. There's one of the things that came up in my work when I was coaching as my primary thing was convince versus convey. You
Mm,
know, like where are the spaces where I'm trying to convince someone that they either need something that I'm trying to sell or that something about me is okay versus just conveying what I'm into
like
and
that.
then just allowing the energy of that authentic conveyance to just bring back what it means.
Yeah, yeah,
Big, big difference.
yeah. My partner always points that out to me when, because I do a lot of convinced talking.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something I'm working on, and he points out to me all the time because I told him I want to do more speaking engagements, and so he's been critiquing me, which is of course fun all the time, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, he points that he'll pinpoint little things that I say, and he's like, you don't, he's like, just own it, don't say. He's like, you don't have to say, well, I think that. He's like, don't say, just say it, just make the statement, and just we don't even realize. I probably said I think probably 50 times on this call,
Yeah.
but just little things like that, and just I love that convince versus convey, and just saying this is what it is, this is me.
Yep, absolutely. And that's going to help you significantly because I know it helped me significantly and still does in the type of work we do. You know, as people in our field is personal development essentially. And
Yeah.
in this personal development field, there is a lot of that. There are a lot of things that say, well, this is what you need. And if you don't have this, convince that it's the right thing. But it wears down on the healer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even if it becomes successful, that's why I backed away from the focus on entrepreneurialism. For me, the focus was too much on do they get it? And not enough on is this actually what I want to share? And so
Mm-hmm.
when I made that shift, and interestingly, from a business, put that business hat on, when I made that shift, that is when I started to get a lot more bookings as a speaker. And that is when then I started doing less of my own workshops and just being like the talent, which is, I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy producing also, but I like just showing up and having an assistant. Yo, I love that.
Right.
And why is it then that I was there in the energy of, oh, I hope they get it. That
Right.
energy doesn't bring
Right. Yeah.
it doesn't bring me keynotes. What started bringing me keynotes was the energy of, here's what makes sense to me. This is my little mountain, and I invite you to come over to my mountain. So if it's 4 people or 400 people, I still get to express myself authentically. And I tell you, Gigi, the more I released that, and I still am releasing it at another level, but the more I do that, the more things show up. I get a phone call, I get an email, I get an invitation. I'm like, damn it, I wish I knew this like 5 years ago when I was staying up all night with 2 different coaches, focusing on the business aspect when all I needed to do was to convey whatever creator was giving to me, to share. Like,
Yeah.
really, when you talk about us complicating our purpose,
Yes.
that's how I did that, and I did the hell out of that complication thing, honey, until I was like, wait, I'm tired. And only 3 people bought this thing that I took like 4 months creating. Like, what the hell? Is it the whole world's fault? No. What do I need to do differently? How do I need to feel? What do I need right now? All of that brought
Mm.
me right back around to where I am now, where it's like, oh, I can look at my calendar and see my bookings and not feel like, oh my God, I need to prepare this thing for it. I'm just being myself and I have my talking points. But when I go out and do talks, I never know exactly what I'm going to say
Mm.
because I show up and then I get, I vibe with the women there. And then I know the primary thing that I want to convey. And sometimes that changes. And then I just speak from that space. And it never, ever, ever goes wrong. Ever.
That's amazing. I think that's true with writing also too. If I had a problem, and I still do sometimes, I'm challenged with freelance writing when I'm given an assignment and I have to write about a topic
Yeah, yeah,
given to me, and I'm like, ugh, okay, I'm a writer. I can
yeah,
write. I can do this, but
yeah,
it doesn't come out the same way. I feel like also as a writer, your best work comes out when you are in that moment. This is
yeah.
what's in my heart or on my mind right now. It comes out, and it comes
Yep,
out great, and it resonates.
yep, yep.
Imagine speaking, it makes sense that it would be the same way.
Totally, totally. And even speaking to that, this is good. I feel like, writers definitely need to watch this because I think there's a lot of life juice in here. One of the things about that, too, is that because I also freelance from time to time, what I do is if I'm given a topic, and I try not to do freelance work where I'm given a topic.
Right, because, yeah, for that reason.
Work. But occasionally I'll do it. And what I do is I start with my story in that thing. So one of the places I write for is, what's the site? Simplify This or something like that. And it's a business site.
Okay.
And so she might say, oh, okay, give me an idea of some topics. And I'll give her the things, well, try to relate it to business. So then I come up with like my main talking points to say, okay, these are the 3 things that I want to convey, right? There's the word again. I want to convey that. And then I tell my story through those 3 points. So I'm always going to go back to how I'm feeling in that moment. And so the work, the difference between someone who writes things and someone who says, no, I'm a writer, like we put that title to ourselves and we own it, is that you're never not telling your story. Like your story is never not relevant. It's just now the artistry is the weaving in of your story within that assignment. And it is absolutely doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you do that. That's how you.
I get that. That is so helpful.
Good.
That is really helpful, and I think that is, like you said, and I hope that writers consider this in anything that you do, whether it's you're given an assignment or if you have a blog and you feel like, oh, I have writer's block, I don't know what to write about, I don't know what the readers want to read. I think that see, I said it again. I think that I feel that through that, just putting your own experience into whatever comes out of you, what keeps it from feeling like the grind, like work, like you just can't, get it. It's just not clicking. I think we get in our own way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the question that I ask myself in those assignment type of work when I do it is, where am I in this story?
Yes.
Where am I in this story? And there's never, sometimes the answer comes sooner, and then other times it might take some days. But it always shows up to say, I remember when Sage said this, and then I felt connected to that, or Marley said that, or that. Like you're always in the story because you're the one having the experience. And so that's the talent part, as a writer, that's a skill, right? So there's the talent and then there's the skill. And so the skill is that part to really be able to answer the question in writing, where am I in this story?
I love it. That is so helpful.
So I got a lot out of this. I don't know whoever's watching this. I hope but
for me.
Yes, I got so, and I really encourage you guys. The Beautiful Disruption. It's available on Amazon.com. So is Radical Self-Expression Manifesto. It's really important that you look at the tribe of women who are telling stories, right? Who are giving these narratives and healing out loud. Because whether you're a writer or just somebody who likes to dive into a good read, both of these pieces of work are about healing out loud. And about finding yourself through your willingness to have a different experience. And so if that's something that resonates with you, you have to get these books. You have to get them, and you have to share how those stories help you to feel. Because I feel like through reading these books, women can have access to stories in them that need to come out. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. It's very well said. And I know that every woman, every person has a story inside of them. Yeah. However you channel that, both of these books are the type of books that you can't help but look back and self-reflect on your own story, and whether you write it, whether you make do a painting, whatever it is, maybe you get together a group of women at your church and just start having conversations. Not everybody writes. There's so many different ways to be creative.
Yeah.
And to connect with other women, because I think that for us, it's writing and sharing that and talking about it. It could be just getting in a room with a few people and just sort of, let's take the masks off. Let's remove the representatives and let's just have some real talk. And I think that I'm afraid of that. But I'm telling you, just like you said, even if it's 2 or 3 people who get it and who are like, yeah, I'm coming with you, you will create some beautiful experiences and connections with those 2 or 3 people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the point of it all. Yeah. 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 So we appreciate you watching wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching. And your book is available, Gigi, on Amazon.com at The Beautiful Disruption. Gigi Renee, is it Hill? Renee Hill and Akilah S. Richards. We invite you to share the stories, to read the stories, and to really just start your own process of healing. And I love that Gigi said it's however you want to heal, however you want to share. It doesn't have to be through writing, but by all means, let yourself dive into these stories. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Akilah.
Thank you, Gigi. Much appreciated, sis.